आप देख रहे हैं न्यूज नाउ 24/7। ताज़ा खबरों के लिए हमारे साथ बने रहें।
भारत के रक्षा सचिव राजेश कुमार सिंह ने हाल ही में अपने वक्तव्य में कहा कि रणनीतिक और नीतिगत दृष्टिकोण से हाल के सभी संघर्ष, ऑपरेशन सिंदूर रूस यूक्रेन युद्ध और इजराइल हमास संघर्ष, यह स्पष्ट रूप से दर्शाते हैं कि वायु शक्ति की सर्वोच्चता आधुनिक युद्ध का निर्णायक तत्व बन चुकी है। उन्होंने बताया कि अब सैन्य अभियानों का स्वरूप तेजी से नेटवर्क केंद्रित हो रहा है, इसलिए भारत को अपनी रणनीतियों को नई तकनीकों के अनुरूप ढालने की आवश्यकता है। उन्होंने कहा कि भारत के रक्षा रणनीतिकार लंबे समय से वायु शक्ति की क्षमता को पहचानते आए हैं। भारत के 2 परमाणु सशस्त्र प्रतिद्वंद्वी हैं जो अतीत में परमाणु धमकियों के माध्यम से रणनीतिक दबाव बनाने की कोशिश करते रहे हैं, लेकिन ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के दौरान प्रधानमंत्री ने स्पष्ट कर दिया कि भारत अब ऐसे दबावों के आगे नहीं झुकेगा। राजेश कुमार सिंह ने प्रधानमंत्री की आत्मनिर्भर भारत पहल का उल्लेख करते हुए कहा कि जिस प्रकार भारत ने कोविड-19 टीकों के निर्माण और डिजिटल भुगतान सेवाओं में वैश्विक स्तर पर सफलता पाई, उसी तरह अब देश स्वदेशी जेट इंजन निर्माण पर फोकस कर रहा है। उन्होंने बताया कि कुछ क्षेत्रों में DRDO ने उल्लेखनीय प्रगति की है और लंबी दूरी की मिसाइलों तथा तोपखाने के क्षेत्र में भारत अब दुनिया के शीर्ष 3-4 देशों में शामिल हो गया है। उन्होंने ये भी खुलासा किया कि भारत के पास अब लेजर हथियारों का एक प्रोटोटाइप तैयार है और सरकार इन उन्नत तकनीकों को तेजी से रक्षा प्रणाली में शामिल करने पर काम कर रही है। प्रधानमंत्री ने यह भी रेखांकित किया है कि चीन जैसे पड़ोसी देशों ने एक ऐसी संकर रक्षा और औद्योगिक मशीन खड़ी की है जो केंद्रीय नियोजन और बाजार अनुशासन का मिश्रण है। इस संदर्भ में उन्होंने कहा कि भारत को अब पारंपरिक रूप से सार्वजनिक क्षेत्र पर अत्यधिक निर्भरता से आगे बढ़कर निजी क्षेत्र की भूमिका को पूर्ण रूप से स्वीकार करना होगा। उनका मानना है कि भारत एक ऐसे मोड़ पर खड़ा है जहां वो अपनी आर्थिक शक्ति और तकनीकी क्षमता के दम पर एक औद्योगिक महाशक्ति बनने की दिशा में अग्रसर है, जो दुनिया की चौथी सबसे बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्था के रूप में उसकी स्थिति के अनुरूप होगा।
And policy perspective. Let me start by appreciating the Center for Aerospace Power and Strategic Studies for organizing this and bringing some fine brains from the operation, scientific and operational domains into this forum. I think all of us realize the primacy of air power in the recent conflicts, whether it is Op Sindoor, whether it is Russia, Ukraine, whether it is Israel versus Hamas. Operations are becoming increasingly net-centric, which requires the need to change our war strategy, tapping the potential of advanced technologies. From the time when we used to talk about those who rule the waves control the world, maybe we are switching to a different set of waves, the airwaves. Our defense strategists have identified the potential of air power for a long time, but we've done so in fits and starts, and there is always this false duality in this country about is it public versus private, is it imports versus Atmanirbharta? I mean, the world doesn't exist in dualities. There are always grays and nuances there, and we have to take pragmatic calls on all of these, particularly at a time when the world is on fire in many ways. There is increasing economic fragmentation, there is competitive protectionism and the weaponization of tariffs. And one of our, there's no secret that President Trump believes that it is the power of tariffs which enables him to control or switch off and switch on conflicts anywhere in the world. In many ways, we are seeing the decline of the old Washington consensus of the post-World War, and we seem to be in an era where the oldest human doctrine of might is right seems to have resurfaced. And in that context, our strategic imperative of Atmanirbharta and the imperative of being the predominant power in the Indian Ocean region and of sufficient asymmetry vis-a-vis our Western adversary, commensurate with our economic power and deterrent capacity vis-a-vis our Northern adversary, all of these would be critical. A few days back, I was talking to the National Defense College in one of their convocation ceremonies that I mentioned. We have two rivals, both of which are nuclear powers. And in that context, the old doctrine of how does conventional deterrence of a nuclear umbrella or nuclear. How does it work, particularly vis-a-vis one particular rival who believes in nuclear brinkmanship and nuclear blackmail? Our Prime Minister, in the context of Operation Sindoor, made it clear that we will no longer succumb to that, to those kind of blackmail. The intent is in the future that terror attacks sourced from a particular part of the world as an instrument of state policy would be responded to. In that sense, we are widening the contours of possibility when it comes to conventional deterrence, even vis-a-vis nuclear powers. I quoted to the NDC this old quotation by a guy called Thomas Skilling, who used to work on deterrence during the time of Cold War, when he mentioned that deterrence between nuclear powers is the art of the possible in the shadow of the unthinkable. Now, we've, in the context of Operation Sindoor, expanded some of those possibilities, deciding that forbearance was no longer an acceptable policy choice. Let me now talk a little bit about Atmanirbharta and the Prime Minister's focus. Right, very recently, in the context, during his Independence Day speech, he spoke particularly about air power, and in specific terms, he talked about how we could make vaccines for during COVID. We've created the world's most powerful engine for digital payments, which accounts for half of the world's real-time digital transactions. We should now focus on building our own jet engine, and he urged our students and youth to take it up as a direct challenge, since that will propel us among the few countries in the world capable of building jet engines. When I see DRDO's presentations, I saw one a couple of days back at a parliamentary committee, I saw that there are at least a few technologies where DRDO has ensured that we are perhaps in the top 4 or 5 in the world when it comes to having those types of technologies. Designing a fighter aircraft is one of them, long-range missiles, artillery guns of different types, various other kinds of missiles. All of those are other areas. And I would imagine that DRDO really should focus on those areas where we are one of the few nations in the top 3 or 5 in the world where we have those critical technologies. Let's focus on those, bring them into production and induction as quickly as we can. I was quite surprised to see the progress we've made with directed energy weapons, for example. I visited one of your labs recently in Hyderabad, and we already have a prototype for a 30 kilowatt laser weapon. We are probably in the top 2 or 3 countries in the world which now have that capacity. The focus should be on really inducting those technologies much faster and not create these false dilemmas between imports and Atmanirbharta. Actually, there is a whole continuum there. You will have certain areas where your TRL level is high enough for you to insist that induction should take place using Indian design and manufacturing. There would be other areas where you are so far away that you would need to rely on at least Make in India in terms of technology transfer, and where it is simply not forthcoming, you may have to go for limited imports as well. And that's what we did last year. We ensured that we put primacy on Atmanirbharta, on domestic expenditure, and we spend almost 90% of our money within the country, and we intend to continue to do that in the future. But while doing so, there will be areas where we will have to rely on some level of transfers of technology. Let's not be shy about that. We have to be pragmatic. There is no point in waiting for some systems that will never come or will come after 10 years while we live with huge capacity voids. The country can't afford that, particularly at a time when India is on the move. We are going to be the 3rd largest economy in the world. We'll move up the Committee of Nations, and as we do so, there'll be many attempts to trip us up. So we better be fully prepared and make those pragmatic choices, as I mentioned. Let me end by making a few broader points about what I feel we should be doing when it comes to ensuring that our capability enhancement relies on domestic industry, but also on pragmatic policy choices. During the Combined Commanders Conference a few days back, the Honorable Prime Minister made this point that there are countries in our region, including China, which have built a hybrid defense and industrial machine that blends central direction with market discipline, using enforceable KPIs, dual use of R&D, and ensures listed defense public sector subsidiaries to quickly scale up complex systems like the J-20 aircraft, and also enables them to rapidly expand exports. In India, we should be thinking about bringing our DPSUs and private firms together into one dual-use pipeline, mandate various subsidiary-level companies, including perhaps a restructured HAL with clear-cut targets, delivery-linked pays, and while insisting on hard targets to cut costs, speed up production, and spin off civilian use technologies. And all of those aspects that I mentioned should equally apply to the DRDO, including the concept of delivery linked, or in terms of delivery of technologies, delivery in time should be linked to pay. We need to move from an overwhelming reliance on the public sector to a full acceptance of the role of the private sector as an equal partner, with focus on creating a level playing field so that any company that manufactures in India and preferably holds its IPRs in India is given equal treatment. The era of AI and various other types of disruptive technology trends also means that the era of incumbency advantage, of nomination-based cost-plus contracting and procurement, of limited competition is over. It's over in the United States as well, which used to deal with only a few primes. They've got rid of that. They are now doing open competition. We need to open up towards startups and new deep tech firms by channelizing our promotional schemes like IDEX and Aditi to provide suitable assistance for prototype development, followed by a spiral development model with strong assured procurement support by the government. Ending monopolies, enhancing ease of doing business, reducing onerous licensing requirements for production, for exports, and for imports, and leveraging the Government of India's buying power to expand and diversify our domestic industrial base is of critical importance, and that is where I was coming to when it comes to the critical importance of aero technologies. Ensuring also, for example, that when we do field evaluation trials and particularly for indigenous technologies and indigenous production, we don't hold our local companies and startups to much higher performance requirements than foreign vendors is also of paramount importance. And this last point was really addressed to our services as well. And I'm again reiterating what the Honorable Prime Minister said a few days back. He was saying that sometimes we treat our indigenous production based on indigenous technologies, we put them onto more onerous requirement than we do foreign systems. Let me end here. I think we are at a stage where we are on the verge of creating a technological and industrial powerhouse that is commensurate with our status as the world's fourth largest economy. I think in the area of critical technologies for air power also, there are areas where we're already there, and there are others where we can reach there with the help of a pragmatic mix of technology transfers and support to domestic startups and deep tech firms. Thank you very much and all the best.
आपको यह वीडियो पसंद आया हो तो इसे लाइक करें, हमारे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें।